All right, what's up, everyone? This is bluetea-TCG coming at you with another Vanguard deck profile, this time for Angel Feather in V Premium. This deck is going to be Celestial, or you can also call it Ramiel. I like calling it Ramiel just to, focus on the centerpiece of the deck, Prophecy Celestial Ramiel. And the build here is focused on achieving the maximum effectiveness of Ramiel to get the most restands we can out of it, and then land the finishing blow with Ramiel Reverse that was recently released in Clan Collection Volume 4. So with that in mind, we'll get right into the deck profile. Start off with the grade zeros and the triggers. So as a starter, we're running one First Day Celestial Peniel. You can pretty much run any V-Series starter that you'd like, as long as it's Angel Feather, of course. And all of them are the same. Which one you run is pretty much up to you in terms of aesthetic or whatever other preference you have. But essentially, this allows you to draw a card and get a quick shield if you went second. Very important to continue your progression in terms of how the game flows. Getting that card draw turns out to be extremely important for a deck that seeks to play a relative long game compared to some other faster decks in the format. So that is all there is to say about the V Series starter. I don't want to spend too long on that one. But next up, we're going to the trigger lineup. We are running 4 Heal Guardians. So the Heal Guardians, again, serve the purpose of just getting that early game survivability and making sure that we don't die to really fast-paced strategies, and those fast-paced strategies sometimes don't allow us to play. So I think it's necessary to have the Heal Guardians in this format, especially with the prevalence of decks in the past, such as the Hamiel OTK, which I talked about a little bit in the previous video. Of course, Hamiel now being banned means that the threat of such decks that are equivalent in power is not as prevalent, but you still want the Heal Guardian just to be able to survive, just in case that onslaught of attacks comes in before you're at grade 3. Oftentimes the grade 2 bullying was really oppressive in V Premium, so Heal Guardians again are built to combat that and make sure that you survive. And in the case that they damage deny you, you're also able to give yourself a damage, which hopefully gets you started in terms of making your combo plays, especially with a deck like this, which seeks to set up the damage zone with cards such as Sariel and Narelle and Danielle, which all need the damage zone in order to interact and get that damage zone set up for Ramiel. So 4 Heal Guardians, and then we're going to be running 4 Draw PGs. Draw PGs in this deck have a place because we're not really going for a super aggressive crit-based strategy as we were with the Gavril OTK, and Draw PGs still give you that extra PG on top of the Protect one that we typically go for in Protect-based decks such as Angel Feather. And the fact that it's tied to a draw trigger is like the icing on the cake, because that draw trigger is going to help you get more cards in hand to play the tempo game, play the grind game if you need to, and of course allows you to see more of your combo pieces as well. So 4 Draw PGs is still the mainstay of decks such as this. And last but not least, we have the 8 crits. So we're running 4 Samyaza and 4 critical hit Angel. The crits, of course, that you run are pretty much up to you in terms of aesthetic, but I'm pretty much running the ones that I like the most. Essentially, you do want 8 crits though, because it allows you to put more pressure on your opponent. For example, you have cards like Hygienist Angel, which is being run in this deck, and having the Hygienist Angel allows you to, if you have a critical that you check off the top of your deck during the main phase, for example, or even during the battle phase, it can be checked off the main phase from Japhkiel's skill, and it can be checked off the battle phase from an ordinary drive check. But it allows you to basically put some more fear and more respect into your opponent in terms of what you're trying to accomplish during your turns, and that way hopefully get more cards out of your hand that gets you closer to winning the game. So the 8 crit still serves a pretty strong purpose in this deck. I don't think it can be replaced by things like front triggers anytime soon. So 8 crits still pretty much the favorite in Angel Feather decks, and that's what we've got here. So that's all for the trigger lineup. Now onto the grade 1s. We've got 4 copies of Scaling Angel, and Scaling Angel in this deck is pretty strong because it basically doubles as setting up your damage zone with cards from the drop zone, on top of giving you back your resources needed to be able to pull off the rest of your setup. Because a lot of the setup cards that are in this deck require soul, and Scaling Angel is also refilling the soul on top of getting cards from the drop zone into the damage zone. And then, of course, the first skill comes up when you ride it as your grade 1 ride. If you're going second when you ride this card, you typically use the V Series starter skill first to draw a card and get that quick shield. and then you do Scaling Angel skill to discard the Quick Shield as cost, and then draw a card, which allows you to cycle even more through your deck, and it gives you more advancement in your game state to get you closer to that win condition, which is fulfilling Ramiel and Ramiel Reverse's skills. So 4 Scaling Angel is really good in this deck, and I think she's still, I mean, one of the better grade ones that Angel Feathers have available in the near future in B Premium. So next up, we've got 4 Nakir. 4 Nakir is basically being run as your grade 3 searcher. Not only that, but also as your 13k booster, because you want the 13k booster to be able to apply more pressure on your opponent when you're going for your restands with Ramiel. And on top of that, being able to search for the Ramiel and the Ramiel Reverse, because we're not really running too many grade 3s in this deck, as you'll see soon, you do need to be able to see them more easily, which is what Nakir allows you to do. So again, there's not too much to say about it. The condition to fulfill the extra 5k that allows you to boost with it or attack with it is extremely easy, I think, especially when compared to other grade 3 searchers sometimes. It's pretty much something that you'll never have to sweat about. You'll pretty much fulfill it every single turn, where it's relevant at least. So that's why Nakir is great for this deck, and I think she's still good at 4 copies especially. And another thing to mention, uh, I think running 4 copies is especially favored in Celestial builds because we are setting up the damage zone with consistent cards that we want names to match with the cards on our rearguard circle. So running 4 is especially rewarded in this kind of build, and that is why it'll come up later on when we talk about some other cards. And speaking of which, speaking of those other cards, Narelle is one of those cards, and we're running 4 copies of it because she is just that good. She's one of the new ones that we got in Clan Collection Volume 4, and her skill is extremely important for fulfilling the maximum effectiveness, essentially, of Prophecy Celestial Ramiel, as well as not being punished the most off of Ramiel Reverse. So let's go ahead and read her skill. Let me get it close to the camera here. At the beginning of your main phase, if you have a Vanguard with Celestial in its card name, you put this unit into your damage zone, you draw a card, and choose a grade 2 or less face-up card in your damage zone and put it into your soul. So this card allows you to cycle even further through your deck, while also getting itself in the damage zone to prepare for the second skill, which is an activated ability from the damage zone. It's a soft once per turn, but it kind of confuses me because it leaves the damage zone anyway, which kind of makes the soft once per turn a little irrelevant there. But I guess they just put it there as a just in case kind of thing. But anyway, you soul blast 1 as cost. You search your deck for up to 1 card with Celestial and a different card name from the face-up cards in your damage zone. You put it into your damage zone, and then you shuffle your deck. If you put it into your damage zone, you put this card into your soul. So this card not only gives you back the soul blast that you used to pay for the cost, but it also allows you to get any Celestial that you don't already have in your damage zone in order to prepare for that maximum effectiveness on Prophecy Celestial Ramiel. So again, Narelle just an amazing card that we got in the new Clan Collection set, and I think she's going to be at 4 copies for pretty a long time. I don't see her going down to less than 4 copies anytime soon. So I'm excited to be able to run her in this build. And that's actually going to do it for our grade 1 lineup. So interestingly enough, we are running only 12 grade 1s, which is a little risky, but I feel like it's necessary to free up space for some of the other heavy hitters that we're running in the grade 2 and grade 3 lineup. So speaking of which, the grade 2s, of which we're running a total of 15, I believe, which is, yes, indeed, quite a bit, but trust me, we'll explain in detail what the grade 2s we're running are and why we're running them. So we're running 4 Danielle. Danielle is one of the new ones that we got in the Clan Collection Volume 2 again. And what she does is allows you to tutor out one of the Celestials that you have in your damage zone, and then call it to the rearguard circle. So it allows you to basically, like you're rewarded for setting up your damage zone, and then you also get that card straight from the deck to your rearguard circle so that you can basically use it for your plays right away. So let's go ahead and read it more specifically so that, so that we understand exactly what it does. All right, so when placed on Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle from hand, you discard a card from your hand, and then you search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as a face-up card in your damage zone, call it to Rearguard Circle, and then shuffle your deck. If you called a unit without Celestial in its name, you counterblast 2. So that counterblast 2 is like a punishment if you're not calling a card with Celestial. For example, let's say you're calling Hygienist Angel, which, yes, is probably one of the cards you'll commonly use to call with Danielle. So just make sure that if you do that, that you have a way of countercharging it back, because otherwise, you won't be able to get the restands with Ramiel if all the cards that you set up are face down. But usually not a huge problem for Angel Feathers in general because they have really easy ways to countercharge and typically it's not something you got to worry about at all. But Danielle, again, amazing card. I think deserves to be at 4. The thing is, she works only when placed from hand, so that is why I think she is warranted at 4 copies because she is not effective anywhere else but in the hand. And typically, when you call her, you won't be using her again afterwards. So feel free to call over her afterwards if you need to get more important rear guards in the field. And again, you're not really going to be using her after you use her skill once. So each copy is kind of tied to a single use of the skill um, over the course of one match. So pretty much you're only going to be using her up to 4 times per game. But it's not a huge deal because you do have ways to get her back if you ever do need to use her skill again, or if you just don't happen to see all 4 copies, which again, that's not unusual at all. But again, great card. Glad that we got her in Clan Collection Volume 4. But next up, we are going into the less surprising ones, the old favorites that we've been running for a long time, which is for Sariel. So Sariel, again, amazing card. She was basically made for Celestials and Ramiel specifically, because she allows you to get straight from your deck the card that you need into the damage zone, and then you heal a card. But the fact that she allows you to get straight from deck into the damage zone means that you won't have to worry too much about going through some extra hurdles or steps in order to accomplish the full setup that you need for Ramiel's maximum potential. So Sariel allows you to accomplish that. And then you can also use Sariel to get any card that you want from your deck into your damage zone, and then thereby you get it into your hand. But usually you won't be doing that because most of the time you'll be using Sariel directly for damage zone setup in this game, or in this deck, excuse me, for purposes of Ramiel's skill. Unlike the Gavril deck where we use Sariel to primarily get the grade 3s or grade 2 pieces that we needed into our hand eventually via cards like Japhkiel and Bellyful Meds Angel and such cards that allow you to get cards from damage zone to hand. Speaking of which, we are going to be running Japhkiel, so let me get into that. But for Sariel, I think she remains one of the better grade 2s that we have available. But the next card is probably the one that does challenge her spot in terms of being the most important grade 2 in the deck. We're running 4 copies of Japhkiel. Japhkiel still probably one of the best staple grade 2s that Angel Feather has available in V Premium. And I do think that in order to get the most out of her, you have to run 4 copies. So that's pretty much why we're still running her. And she still serves a great purpose in this deck. Not only gives you utility in terms of getting cards from damage zone to your hand, such as maybe a Danielle or even like a Ramiel Reverse that is sitting in the damage zone that you need in your hand to ride eventually, but also allows you to damage check, which, if you check into a critical trigger and you apply that critical trigger on Hygienist Angel, that trigger effect, those trigger effects are going to be there for the entire turn, meaning that if you happen to restand Hygienist Angel at any point, it's going to have its own power bonuses on top of the critical trigger bonuses, and then it's going to get restood for another attack that's going to be very difficult for the opponent to potentially deal with, meaning they'll have to probably use a lot of resources, a lot of cards from hand in order to make sure that they defend against the onslaught that you would about to be unleashing upon them with such cards. So Japhkiel, again, a really good card. I think she remains to be a staple in decks such as these, and I don't see her going down in the ratios anytime soon. So 4 copies is where I'm feeling good about. And finally, we are running 3 copies of Hygienist Angel. So Hygienist Angel, she wasn't obviously being run in Gavril, so let's kind of go over her in more detail. Even though her skill is pretty simple, I think she pairs extremely well with Ramiel, especially with all the restands that you're able to accomplish. So her skill is, this unit gets plus 5,000 power for each card in your damage zone. Very simple continuous ability. But what's worth noting about this skill is that it is during both your turn and your opponent's turn. It does not specify that it's during your turn only. So that means on your opponent's turn as well, this card will be as big as whatever's in your damage zone. So let's say you have 5 cards in your damage zone. This card is going to be at 32,000 power, meaning that if your opponent wants to deal with this, they're going to have to either remove it by means such as card effects that retire or card effects that put into soul, or they're going to have to attack it head on. And if they attack it head on, that means they're going to have 32,000 power, which is 32,000 power that they're probably not going to be using to swing at you for a finishing blow. And that just allows you to survive even more. And that basically would function as a taunt in that regard. So Hygienist Angel is really good in that regard. And of course, you're using this as the main mid-game swinger, mid-game beat stick. in order to benefit from Ramiel. That way you can, push forward towards your win condition eventually, which is finishing with Ramiel Reverse. So Hygienist Angel, I think, again, the reason why she's good in this deck, she just pairs extremely well with Ramiel, and I found it worth, making space for her in this deck at 3 copies. The reason why we're running 3 copies exactly is you want to usually get 1 in the damage zone, and then you want to get 2 on the both front row rear guard circles, just so that you'll be able to restand both of them because they both match the name that's already in the damage zone with Ramiel. And in case any one of them gets retired or attacked, and thereby it's gone from the rear guard circle, you can still get them back with Scaling Angel eventually, and then from there you can either use Japhkiel to get it back in the hand, or you can even use Ramiel's second skill, which we'll talk about pretty soon here, to get it back in the hand at the beginning of the ride phase. So that's, again, really good. And I think 3 copies of it is just fine. You don't really want to use 4 copies because this is not a card that you'll be using early game per se, or even you won't be really riding into this card either. Of course, it's only a rear guard ability, so you do want to be using it as your mid game swinger. But she's a great card in this build, in my opinion, so worth running her. All right, so now into the grade 3s. The boss herself, we're running 4 copies of Ramiel, Prophecy Celestial Ramiel. This is what we got in Clan Collection Volume 2, and this is what we're building the entire deck around. So, of course, if we're building the entire deck around her, she must be good, right? And indeed, she is amazing in this deck. So let's go ahead and go over her skill. Let me get the camera centered over there. There we go. Hopefully that's good. And then on the Vanguard Circle, it's an auto ability. When it attacks, Soul Blast 1 and Countercharge 1. Then stand all your rear guards with the same card name as a face card in your damage zone. For every 2 units stood, you draw a card, and all of your rear guards get plus 5,000 power to end of turn, which is, again, phenomenal. That is the main restanding play we are building the deck around. This is what you really want to be able to pull off every single turn so that your opponent is pressured and is using a lot of cards in hand in order to survive. The second skill is a utility skill that applies on both the Vanguard and rearguard circle. At the beginning of your ride phase, if your damage zone is 4 or more cards, you may put the top card of your deck into your damage zone. If you do, you choose a card from your damage zone, put it into your hand, and if this card is on rearguard circle, you put it into your soul. So that second skill, basically this card does everything for the deck, and unsurprisingly, right? I mean, we're building the whole deck around it, so it must be able to do all that we need in order to be worth running, which of course it does. So the first skill, of course, is what we're building around for the most part. It is the restanding skill that we are able to accomplish. As long as we are able to restand 4 every turn, then we'll be able to draw 2 and give all of our rear guards plus 10,000 power, which is basically the most we'll get out of this card. And the second skill is what we use at the beginning of the ride phase after we've already ridden it once. Maybe we've also had it on the rearguard circle just in case, but typically you'd get this on the rearguard circle. Typically you'd call it to the rearguard circle only if you're already at 4,000. How's it say 4,000? If you're already at 4 damage, because of course the skill doesn't apply until you have 4 damage. But it does come up pretty often. Typically you use it to get something like a Ramiel Reverse that's in your damage zone into your hand, or if you had a Hygienist Angel retired, and then you got it back into the damage zone with Scaling Angel, then you'd get Hygienist Angel back into your hand and then be able to call it during the main phase of that turn. So Prophecy Celestial Ramiel, again, really good card. This is what you build the deck around. This is what you want to be able to pull off every turn. And you should hopefully you should really be aiming to get the setup for this card off by the time you ride into it for the first time. But of course, that can be a challenge sometimes. So typically, you probably won't be able to have the double Hygienist Angel setup by then. But what your goal usually is to have the 2 Hygienist Angel front row rear guards paired with something like a Nakir, or even a Sariel is fine as well, because Sariel can boost with 1 or less damage. You want those to be boosted behind the Hygienist Angels, and then you want to have all of those aforementioned cards in the damage zone so that you'll be able to restand them along with the Hygienist Angel, and that way they all get plus 10 and they'll all be able to attack once again. So Prophecy Celestial Ramiel is the ace monster of this deck, and deservedly so. And finally, we're running 2 copies of Ramiel Reverse. Now, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Ramiel Reverse, but it's not because she's bad per se. It's because she does a little less than what I thought she would do for this deck. At first, I thought she would be basically a mid-game into late-game control card where you can just ride her and basically cruise with her until the rest of the game, use her as a way of retiring the opponent's rear guards and bringing a lot of cards out of their hand by means of the guard restrict. But it turns out that the guard restrict is less of is less of the like a prevalent skill that comes up as often. It's more so the counterblast that comes up in mid game because usually your opponent has the counterblast in order to avoid having to guard with multiple cards from their hand at the same time against the Ramiel Reverse attack. Or chances are they'll just take the attack in the mid game anyway, which means that you're not really getting much out of the card in the first place. And the fact that you do have the Soul Blast 1 grade 3 card means that you are on a time limit in terms of how many times you can pull it off. But let's go ahead and read the skill more explicitly so that you guys are on the same page as I am. Oh, sorry about that. Just trying to adjust it. There we go. So at the beginning of your battle phase, countercharge 1, then lock all of your rear guards with different card names from the face-up cards in your damage zone. Then for every two of your rear guards, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, retire it, and this unit gets plus 20,000 power until end of turn. And the second ability is when it attacks, you Soul Blast 1 grade 3, and this unit gets drive plus 1 until end of battle. Your opponent may counterblast 2. If they did not, that's until the end of the battle, your opponent will call cards from hand to guard in circle. They must call the same number of cards as the number of cards in your damage zone or more at the same time. So part of why this card is not like a mid-game control card as I expected is the fact that as a finisher, if your opponent is out of counterblast, or let's say they have one more counterblast left, then this will, and you're probably at 5 damage at that point, this will become a 5-card or more at the same time kind of guard restrict on top of retiring your opponent's rear guards and giving it plus 20,000 for each of your rear guards, or every 2 of your rear guards. So by then you've probably already set up your damage zone to have the right names, and you won't have to worry too much about locking your own rear guards because, of course, that is like a punishment for not setting up the damage zone properly. But because you get the retiring of the rear guards on top of the extra power, that means you can potentially retire their intercepts or retire any of their problem cards that might get in the way of your finishing them off, as well as getting the guard restrict, which means that if they are able to counterblast 2, of course, the guard restrict won't come up in that regard. But it still becomes a drive plus 1, which means that they'll have to respect the potential of multiple criticals coming out on the drive check. And the fact that you might still have Hygienist Angels to assist you on the rear guard circle attacks means that they definitely have to pull a lot of cards out of their hand to respect it. But the fact that the guard restrict can be avoided by counterblasting 2 means that if you want to use it as a control card, you have to be prepared for them to just take the damage most of the time and not be willing to counterblast at all, because typically if you use a Soul Blast 1 grade 3, that means you want them to counterblast, but again, like if it's mid game, they probably don't have much damage in the first place, and they'll just take it just to get that extra damage, meaning you're still giving them basically an extra counterblast at that point. So that's why I'm running this card at 2 copies, because it's not the control card that I had initially thought it would be, and it's mainly just a finisher. So you usually just want to get this card ready once you're feeling confident that you're going to finish them off with this attack on top of potential Hygienist Angels that are on the rear guard circle. But yeah, I think this card is still good. It's actually it's still one of the better reverse units that was released in Clan Collection Volume 3 and 4. But again, it's not exactly what I thought it would be, so that's why I'm running it at 2 copies. That's basically how I'm feeling about it right now. This could change later on, but I'm feeling that at 2 copies just fine. And that does it actually for the Celestial build for V Premium. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This deck was, honestly, when I was playtesting it, it was a lot more fun than I expected it to be. And I found myself having more fun with this deck than the earlier, pre-Hamiel ban Gavril OTK build, because that deck definitely has some degeneracy attached to it, given how easy and consistent the combo is to pull off. But this deck definitely involves a lot of putting pieces together, trying to figure out the puzzle that you want to accomplish, getting those cards in the damage zone and thereby getting the restands and such. But again, it's a fun deck. I do think Gavril, even after the Hamiel ban, is still slightly better, but this deck does have its place in the mana. So feel free to, experiment with the ratios on your own and see what you feel more comfortable with. But I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. If you'd like to see more deck profiles for Vanguard or even Yu-Gi-Oh as well, I do play Yu-Gi-Oh on top of Vanguard and a little bit of Hearthstone. Feel free to leave a like, comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Vanguard content. And I hope to see you in future streams and or videos. I hope to do some live streams pretty soon here. I'm going to Springfest this weekend, so I'm going to try to get some footage recorded of that, as well as hopefully stream some just, casual matches with my friend group that plays Vanguard. So look forward to that, and I hope to see you then.